So welcome to Radio X presents an evening of conversation with Johnny Marr in support of Global's Make Some Noise. I'm John Kennedy, your host for tonight, and I think without further ado, we should welcome the one and only Johnny Marr! I like that. People cheering a guitar as it's picked up. Fantastic, proving that he knows how to please a crowd. Johnny Marr on guitar. Amazing stuff.
Good night. I've earned my £10. Oh, it's for charity. I'll waiver it.
So it's great to have you here, Johnny, up on the Global Roof Terrace, looking across the skyscrapers of London town. It's an amazing spectacle, and great to have this fantastic audience here. Johnny's moving around the stage, prowling like a guitar god, in search of a guitar strap.
Putting the strap on the guitar. I have to be careful how I say that. Wow. Do you know what? I've been in bands with more people than there are in this room.
It is an intimate affair here on the roof terrace, so people are only kind of two arms lengths away from us. Yeah. This is how close Radio X is bringing our listeners to Johnny Marr, which is a change.
When you go on stage at Glastonbury, right, there's like, whatever, in the afternoon, there's like 200,000 people out there. It is not as scary as this right now. People can actually touch you and say things.
We can hear them. So as Johnny puts the strap on his guitar, I can explain that
there you go.
He's got a pedal board with him, but it's not necessarily his normal pedal board that you carry around when you're on tour. So you've just come back from the States, haven't you?
Yeah, I've just come back from this. I came back from the States the night before last. We're playing some shows we were playing all around Europe at first, and Copenhagen and Stockholm, and here we played at Islington here, and Berlin and Paris, and then we went over to New York and LA, Toronto. So we did like 12 gigs playing some new songs from this new record.
So the new record is called The Comet. It's out at midnight tonight. We've just recorded a nice chat where we go through the whole of the album, an exposure album playback, which you can hear on Radio X on Monday night. And I thought, called The Comet, the new album, it would be a good place to start. We've heard a few tracks already. I'm sure everybody here has heard them as well. So we've heard The Tracers, and we've heard Hi Hello, and we've heard Walk Into the Sea. You've been playing a number of these songs as well from the album at these live gigs, including Islington in London. And you're really excited about this new material, aren't you?
I'd be more excited if I had a roadie.
So this is the reality of...
Do you know what? Apparently, right? Thank you. So, a journalist told me yesterday that this new record is album number 18 that I've made, right? I still don't have a roadie.
A personal roadie.
But sorry about a distraction. It's amazing that the record's out like tomorrow or midnight tonight. I'm super excited about that because the reaction to the three songs that we've put out so far, Tracers, Hi Hello and Walk Into the Sea, has been really, really good, like just universally positive, and people who like what I do really like those songs. You know, some people really like Hi Hello, and I've had a lot of love for all of those songs. So, you know, it's great because you never really know what it's going to mean to people. You know, you like it, and you know that, you know, you think it's great, and sometimes, you know, you think it's amazing. But in a way, it's still justified. You can do whatever you want. I think artists are allowed to do whatever they want, and I think art is art regardless of it. It doesn't really need anyone to validate it. But doing what I do, you know, it's kind of a bit pointless unless people react to it and people love it, I think, because that's why I do it, you know.
Yeah. And it's really interesting hearing those 3 tracks and also hearing the whole album, because it's really varied. I felt the first 2 solo albums, you know, had a mission, and you were trying to establish a sound, and you had an approach that you were determined to take to the stage and then tour the world, which is exactly what you did. And this one, you're kind of spreading out, trying many more eclectic sounds and styles.
You know, the reason why this record sounds the way it does, well, yeah, that is right, why it's eclectic, and it doesn't feel quite like on the same kind of mission, is because I just completely followed my feelings on this. And people might think, well, that's what you would do anyway. But on the first solo record, I'd been with Modest Mouse for a few years, which was amazing. You know, actually was best time of my life so far. And that was great. And then playing with the Cribs. But over the years of being with Modest Mouse and the Cribs, being on tour constantly, always touring. My lifestyle is quite different from most of the people in those bands. I mean, they're all great professional fellas, but I was like very, I wasn't drinking. I was very, very into running. So I found that I was spending a lot of time on my own, which I liked, which is great, you know, but and coming up with a lot of ideas for songs, titles. When I was running and stuff, I'd come up with titles and come up with tunes and things like that. And so I went into the first record with an idea, you know, as a real mission, as you say. The reason I went solo, or had solo record, was because I had a bunch of these songs, The Messenger, Newtown Velocity, things like that. And I just thought there's no point in someone else singing them. There's just no point in giving this music over to someone else to write their lyrics on, because I've got them there. And then there's no point in anyone else, me sort of presenting the world with a front man. So I thought, well, I'll just do it, you know. I didn't know how it was gonna go, what level it was gonna be on. And it went really well. People liked it, and it sold a lot and all of that. And then second record was a similar thing, in that I had an idea, the idea being it should sound like the first one, you know. But the momentum, you know, without getting too technical about it, all of these bands that I used to like made certain kind of second albums. There's a syndrome or a theory, the second album syndrome, and what that usually means is a band do a first album that's really popular, and then they go on the road and they don't have time to write the second album, and the second album is like a weaker version of the first album. That's the given sort of rock paradigm. Well, I actually, as a fan, I really liked the Talking Heads second album, and I really liked the Only One second album. There's a whole load of second albums that I really liked, so I went, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do the second album, and it's going to sound like the second album. So that's what Playland was about. So to get back to your point, this album, I didn't have time to have any plan or consideration or design or idea, because I'd done the book 2016, I'd written and put the book out. And then when it was finished, when I'd done all the book talks, I was kind of burnt out and in need of sitting under a palm tree or by a swimming pool. So what I did was I went into a factory in the outskirts of Manchester and started writing a record. And then, and during that time as well, Brexit had happened. There's just no way of getting away from that word, is there? Even if you try, there's no way of getting away from it. And, you know, and then the American election happened. And me and my mates I was just done with talking about it. I was done with thinking about it. I had no answers. I I didn't really even know how I felt about it anymore. So I had this thing where I wanted to get away. I wanted to make music because I'd just been doing the book, and I wanted to get away from the intensity of the political dialogue, political conversation, either in the public eye or with my friends who were speaking about it all the time very intensely. And so I was like, well, luckily for me, from being a boy, I used to just sit on the end of the bed, and I used to just sort of go like. I used to just do that for hours, and that's how I learned to play and how I learned to write songs, a certain part of it. And it's just sort of playing how I felt, really. And I thought, all right, well, I'm going to do that. It wasn't anything to do with the record company saying you need a record out or thinking it was a good career move or anything like that. I just really needed to go and do that in a studio and start doing what I do, And though, like I said to you as well, the only other thing is I did want to get the band together because I've been doing the book, and then they'd been waiting for me to. My band are like DIY experts now, because I had 2 years off the road, and their houses are like palaces. So I wanted to get the band back together, but anyway, so I went in the studio and I started to just, I didn't have a plan, I just started to write some tunes and follow my feelings, really. And the record, that's why the record's so sort of diverse, because I just went, I feel like doing one like this, I feel like doing one like that. I mean, that sounds very simplistic and like I just write at will. It isn't like that at all. There's a whole other conversation involved there. You sort of just hope you're inspired and you try and live a life that sort of is in the service of inspiration, just, try and do things that you think will be good for giving you good ideas, and then you go in there and you roll your sleeves up, and sometimes you come up with ideas that end up on a record, and other times they just sort of end up on the shelf. But that's and then 9 months later the record was sort of done, or maybe 11 months later the record was done, and tomorrow it's actually going to be out, which is kind of a good thing,
One of the interesting things with Hi Hello, quite a few people have picked up the fact that it has an element of a Smiths sound to it, and something we've discussed over the times that we've met each other before is the idea that I always see you as a very forward-looking artist who's constantly thinking about what new challenges you can set yourself and how you can turn your guitar and try different things that you've not done before. Yeah. Whereas with this new record, it's the first time, I think, that you've actually embraced some of the sounds that you've created in the past and felt that you can pick them up again and use them in a newer way.
Yeah, well, I'm always, for me, the buzz is trying to do something new, like whether I was doing that with electronic or when, well, that's why I play with Pet Shop Boys. It's just taking the guitar, it's still making it a pop music, not being really completely out there, but just trying a bit of everything, really. And but occasionally, something will happen, and you'll come up with a tune, and it just sort of feels right. Over the years, I've done, particularly in the 90s, I'd be writing so many bits of music, and it would sound possibly, let's say Smithsy, okay? In other words, sounded like me playing the guitar, right? I would discard it. I mean, sometimes I didn't, because it was so, people around me in the room were like, what are you doing? So there's a Cribs riff. All right, I should have practiced before I came out. But there's a Cribs song, and there's a the song that's kind of, that have got those sort of moments in it. But on the new record, I was sat at home with a 12-string acoustic, which is a different situation to this. And I was just playing that absent-mindedly. She's so simple. I could play that when I was like 14, but it just sort of was like, I've done that before. That sounds really good. And then that, when are you coming out? The day I was kind of like, what is this? And then rather than just go, oh, okay, I've done that in the past. I was just like, no, that kind of feels real. You know, it feels really sincere. You know, and I just sort of followed it like. Why are you coming up? Get away now and on the band. I'm gonna be one. It was going like that, and the. Keep on track. I didn't have the words then. You never look back. And then, hello. Whatever you need and wherever you go. I was sort of just doing that, and then about 20 minutes later, I was like, "That's a song." And I was quite sort of, I wasn't kind of gung-ho about it. I just went in the studio the next day, and Doviak, who's my co-producer, we were working on something else. So let me just put this down. And then he put a beat down, and then straight away it was like, oh, right, okay, you know, that's really got a good feeling. And then to jump to when it came out, I mean, then I produce it, and I get the band on it, and I put all these guitar bits on, and put the solo and all this stuff that I'm really buzzing about. But then when it came out, and it's one of the positive things of the modern age of social media, loads of people who are fans and who love it just went, wow! And I just jumped from being on my couch to putting it out as a record, and loads of people just said, oh, I really love that song. And that's one of those times when it's good to be me. There you go.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people talk about the Johnny Marr sound, in a way you've just referred to that. You know, when people, you know, when you have allowed yourself to be you, you know, with a guitar, as you sounded, and you said, in some ways, you felt you could play that guitar figure when you were 14 years old, and in Set the Boy Free, you know, you explain how at the age of 5, you know, you go past this shop every day. And every day you force your mum to stop and look at this wooden toy guitar in the window.
Yeah.
And how you nag her until she finally caves in and goes and buys the guitar for you. And then you carried it around wherever you went.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to think that, you know, that was something inside you that drove you, that kind of immediately fascinated you. Even the shape of it maybe drew you in.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you had it with you all the time, and then eventually it became a real guitar. Yeah. And you took up that obsession, and instead of just aping and copying all the great records that you really loved, like T-Rex, whatever, I mean, obviously you did that and you learned those parts.
Yeah.
But many people get to that stage, and then, they form a band, but then they just introduce the things that they've copied into that band.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you kind of forced yourself to search for your own sound kind of straight away, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed to me like that just was really, really obvious that all the time when my mates were, you know, everyone was in a race. A lot of mates, and a lot of people who played the guitar where I moved to, and some people played the bass, and there was a couple of drummers around and everything, but we had nothing to do with them, and if we could help it. It seemed like everybody was like listening to rock records, and they're really fixated on the guitar bit and learning all of this stuff. So my big party trick. So when I was about whatever, someone was trying to play Gene Genie, and it was the 70s, right? So someone else was playing, Smoke on the Water, and then when we got a little better, people playing Bebop Deluxe. But everyone was sort of serious. And, you know, once I'd learned... I was kind of like, I don't really need to know anyone else's stuff now. You know, that was kind of my passport. And everyone was like, what can you play? I was like, I'll play Rebel Rebel. And about 3 years later, how are you getting on? It's like, still play Rebel Rebel. But underneath all of that, though, I was sort of taking that. And I was going, what if I just, this is always on my own, I'm a very sort of sociable person, but one of the things the guitar gave for me was a place where the other side of me, which is the quiet side, could just go and be and just shut everybody out. And I just was spent ages sort of on my own. So I was like, okay, so I'll move. I started just doing stuff like that. So when when I started moving this chord around, I won't get too guitar-y or whatever, but so I was sort of, rather than spending all this time like just aping everybody else, I was kind of like, okay, well, that's horrible. Oh, okay. How do I make that work? So, and I thought, oh wow, okay, what is that? I still don't really know the technical name for that, but that chord, which ended up in quite a lot of Smith songs, so like this not. Here it comes. That is what I was sort of busying myself with. I couldn't play it with as much dexterity, but I was sort of working on that. Sort of finding my own voice, which is the obvious way of putting it. But I sort of come from, not that it's a generational thing, but I just come from a school of thought that is like that. One of the just obvious bottom line things that you should shoot for is to not sound like other people. Really, I mean, I've got all these other influences that people who've sort of followed me, people who know me, will, know. A really, a really good example if we're in guitar stuff here, right? And I'm sorry for those who've already seen me say this, but it's a really good example. It's like the story about when I was at my parents' house with Angie the Smiths were formed and we didn't have a record deal or anything like that. Mike and Andy were already in the band. And I was around at my parents' house and they had this old crappy kind of toy guitar. And I was playing this riff that I thought was a chic hit. Yeah. Take the reverb off a bit. Hang on. So I had that riff going, and I thought I really like that, So just talking about trying to sound like yourself, and anyway, I had no means to record it, and Angie just passed a driving test, and her parents had loaned her. Her parents had an old little Vox VW Beetle that we used to sort of hang out in. So I was like, "Get me round to Mozz's, because he's got a tape machine." So she's okay. So got in the car like I was gonna have a baby, right? So I'm in the car trying not to, I've got my feet up like that. I'm trying not to change this riff because. You just change stuff, So all the way, it's a 20-minute ride to Moses, I'm going. All the way through, right? Now, Angie, who it always, you know what you're going to say, don't you? She always leaves me to it when I'm in that sort of nutty sort of headspace. She's driving away there, and I was sort of playing, maybe just because it was just boring for her. She said, she just said, make it sound like Iggy. So make it sound like Iggy. She loves Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, So I don't know what she's doing with me, but because not even in your wildest imagination do I look like any of those guys. But anyway, so she said, make it sound like Iggy, and so hold on, let me just turn this down. So I took that Nile Rodgers thing, and I just played Iggy Pop chords, which is. And then she was like, "Yeah, that's cool." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Yeah. And then so it's a Sunday evening. Get to Morris's house, and I prayed it was the one night of the year that he didn't leave the house, that he left the house. I fucked that up, really, actually. That he left the house is the punchline. But you know what I mean. And so I'm stood there with this guitar, and he opened the door, and he's like, "What's happened?" I was like, "Mama, check this out, check this out. Check this out." And he knew me pretty well by then. He was like, "Okay," so he just went straight, got this little tape machine. I was on the stairs in his hallway, and then I started putting it down, and then I put it down, and as I'm putting it down, I thought, this song needs another bit. Rebel, rebel. And that then became obviously Hand in Glove, right? The first and best Smith song at that point, I think. So I put that down, and then we were rehearsing. I want to say the next day or the day after, and I showed Mike and Andy. I was like, "Check this bit out." Andy, who played with me since being 14, he goes, "I'm sure it's Rebel, Rebel." He always does that. And funny enough, 25 years later, Nile Rodgers and David Bowie had their biggest ever hit by working together. Huh? Coincidence? I think not.
Did you go and buy a tape recorder after that experience?
Sure as shit I did, man. Yeah. No, I had what happened, I used to have a weird 3-track tape recorder in my. It's just that I wasn't at my house. So I always had I had my own tape recorder, and then one of the things how I got to do what I do was I just obsessively spend hours. I'd put a guitar track down, just a simple chord change, and then I just layer stuff on top, and then layer stuff on top, and then try and find ways of making it work. There was definitely pot involved, I will say that. Just hours and hours of making these really intricate tapes of guitars on top of each other. So by the time we came to sort of play and go in the studio, I was by no means an expert, but I knew how to kind of get guitars out of the way of each other and sort of use different sounds on top of each other. I was kind of a bit of a nerd about it, really. I still am, really. It comes back to what I was saying about making Call the Comet, was that feeling I had going into making the new album was like that I used to have when I was making tapes. Nothing to do with the music industry. It's just like, I need to put guitars on top of other guitars and drum machines and then sing some stuff on top of it. So that's that.
I mean, it's interesting, because in the same way that Morrissey had a lot of words written already before he even met you. So he had these notebooks with words in. Sitting on the end of your bed as a 14-year-old playing the guitar, did you have lots of these tunes going around in your head that you'd kind of thought up by yourself, not shared with anybody, that you then shared with Morrissey?
Probably, and I still do, really, because I'm always playing. The one track that I took from one of my old bands was this riff, Handsome Devil, the band had... that I had from the band I was in before the Smiths, and I think I had some sort of... What difference does it make? I've been floating around. I used to just always warm up with that. I used to just warm up with that, and then we needed a song, so I said, "Oh, I've got one."
Something in my back pocket. And so, I mean, do you think that you doing that stuff led to people saying, "Oh, you got to meet this guy. Oh, you got to meet this guy." You know, that kind of conversation, because people are aware of you pushing forward on the guitar, doing your own thing on the guitar. You know, that you weren't just trying to be like all the other bands
people
around.
in the neighbourhound and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That happened. No, I sort of I built a name up for myself because I was so young. You know, the first band that I was in when I wrote the book, and I'm usually very matter of fact about stuff, and I've been doing interviews and telling journalists what my story was for so long. I just kind of go, oh, blah blah blah. You know, I thought everybody knew it. But when I wrote the book and I got to the bit where I joined this band Sister Ray and I was 14, and I was actually 14 because there's an article in the newspaper from that time dating it to that. And I started writing about this band who were bikers. Back then the term was bikers, and they were heavy fellas. They'd made a record. They had sounded really like a cross between the Stooges and Hawkwind. And they behaved like a cross between the Stooges and Hawkwind. And someone just one of my mates just said, oh, you know, this guy Johnny's like really, really good. And I don't know why, I can't think what possessed him to have a kid in the band. But I went down there, I joined that band for a short time, and it was a terrifying experience going to rehearsals and all of that. But point is, when I wrote the book, now as a adult, with my own children and everything, I couldn't really believe that I'd done that, you know, that I used to go at the red light district 3 nights a week with my guitar to meet these strangers who didn't give a shit who I was, and just to sort of try and get better. But I learned about playing at really high volume and taking more drugs and and you know, I used to have to walk across the park with all these junkies and horrible, run across the park really late to get the last bus and really pray that I didn't miss it because I was stuck out there on my own. Just a place called Moss Side in Manchester, and did all of that. And as I say, when I wrote the book, I was thinking, wow, really, you know, I just took all of that stuff for granted, really. That's just what you do to get better, you know, it was going to make me better. And then over the years, you know, when I've done stuff like, so, you know, in 2005, 2006, 2005, when I was aware some people, it was in the press, Johnny Marr's joined Modest Mouse, and a lot of people in the UK were like, who's Modest Mouse? America, they were already a really big band. Behind the scenes, the singer in the band had called me up. I knew who they were, was really intrigued who they were, and he said, do you want to join the band? I was like, well, let's calm down, first things first. Anyway, I went over to Portland, Oregon, for a 10-day experiment. I'd heard that they were a pretty wild bunch of guys, and I went over to Portland, out of my comfort zone, to walk into a room full of strangers, because I don't walk into a room going, yes, the charming man has arrived. Stand back. No, you know, you don't. You just go in there like in a room full of strangers. If anything, there's a little bit more pressure on you because you've got a reputation. And they've paid for a first-class flight for you and a mega hotel. And, you know, you've got to deliver. So anyway, point is that I went over there, and in the outside world and out there in music biz land and in Rolling Stone magazine, Johnny Marr's joined Modest Mouse. But that's me being the same person as I was when I was 14, joining Sister Ray. Like, you know, everything else in my life just is in service of that. You know, I moved to Portland, Oregon, and the reason why, and as fantastical as this sounds, is because on the very first night with the singer Isaac Brock, he was a genuinely brilliant thinking person, who stood with me. He had a big jug of wine. Never met him before, and I mean a big glass jug of red wine, which was about 3/4 full. And he was stood in front of me playing this really deafening guitar, really loud, that I couldn't make head or tail of. And I was all jet lagged and woozy and stuff, and I was thinking, I'm so out of here tomorrow. But the reason why I ended up living in Portland, Oregon, for 4 years and staying in that band was because he just at one point said to me, "You got any riffs?" And I'd been at home sort of, I'd had this chord change which was like, something like that. That kind of thing. And in the heat of all of that adrenaline and everything, and he just said, have you got any riffs? And I actually had picked up a Jaguar guitar, his, because he was playing so loud that my guitar just wasn't cutting it. And anyway, to get back to the point, the reason I ended up being in that band was because I picked up the guitar and I just went, yeah. And then he just went, well, it could have been, should have been worse than you would ever know. Well, the dashboard melted and we still got the radio. And I was like, that sounds good. And we carried on, and he sang maybe 20 verses. No, maybe say 15 verses, a shit ton anyway, of verses about this car going down this hill and one of the wheels falls off and then, well, the windscreen was broken, but I like the fresh air, And I was thinking, where's he getting this from? And then we carried on, and I just was like... And so what I'm playing there and that feeling in that moment goes right back to when it's the same person as when I was 12, 13, 14. It's just that's sort of what I do. And then my life just has to follow on with that, really. So I was like, including my wife and my kids and my friends and my management and my mates and everyone. I now live in Oregon. Because I'm writing a bunch of songs, because every day it wasn't quite as prolific as that. After the 10-day experiment, I just threw the ticket. I actually just threw the plane ticket in the bin and stayed out there, and then we made a record that went to #1 in America.
Amazing.
So a lot of it is instinct. A lot of it is eccentricity. But I also know what I'm doing when I hear it. I know a good riff when I hear one, and I know what I'm doing because I've been in bands from being a kid. And when I was playing with Modest Mouse, I just was like, the chemistry is working. The chemistry is working. And then when we went to #1 in America with really weird-ass music, I was like, I know what I'm doing, you know what I mean? So
You didn't think it was the Johnny Marr touch? Look,
Well,
we're #1.
Thank you. I was waiting for someone to shout that out.
It's interesting. I mean, you talk about, it seems to me, reading the book, Set the Boy Free, you were given some tremendous freedom. I mean, the idea that you could go off and play with these bikers age 14 across the junkie-strewn fields of Moss Side.
No. My parents said that if I go and do that, they'd throw me out of the house.
Right.
Never speak to me again. Which is what happened.
Right, right. So that did happen.
So I moved in with Andy Rourke and then left school. But we got there eventually, me and my parents. But yeah, as I say, that everything comes second. No matter what, really. My parents were right to react like that. But sorry, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, no. I was just thinking about as you became a father, and Niall, your son, plays guitar, he's in a band, and whether you've been faced with that kind of dilemma yourself, where it's like, hang on a minute, no. Because you created that freedom for yourself, and obviously...
Well, my kids have been brought up with really good freedom. I don't just think... mine and their backgrounds... My background and their background is very different, although, their grandparents are very... they are very sort of open people. Now, growing up, my parents did give me a lot of freedom, they really did. I mean, but they just recognised Sister Ray for what they were, just like real reprobates, you know what I mean? And they knew that I was in danger, but actually I've sort of been a bit misleading there, because my parents, when I put the book out, you have to do all this research, obviously, super fact-checking. I was really, really stringent about that. particularly as there's quite a lot of people out there who goes, well, actually, Girl Afraid, right? You say on page 91 that you wrote it when I've got a bootleg from Scotland when you were playing it at the sound check, and so you have to watch that, right? So I did a lot of fact checking, right? And I didn't realise that my very, very first gig was I went on my own to see Slaughter and the Dogs, and I was 12, and I walked back. I got in at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember it well, and I mentioned that to my mum, and my mum was like, "You wanted to go and see Slaughter and the Dogs?" Right. It's my first gig, Mum. I was 12. Pretty sure we had a car by then. So I was brought up with a lot of freedom, and that's the way Irish families were back then, working class families. They just let the kids get on with it and just trusted me. My parents knew that I was pretty wild, but they knew also that I was really streetwise, and that I kind of knew what I was doing, And they're such music freaks that they were just kind of glad that I was just sort of obsessing about music. But, I had plenty of sort of clashes with them, because I did push the envelope quite a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But with my kids had just grown up. They'd grown up. The house that they grew up in my studio was there up until a few years ago, and the kids, my family sort of grew up kind of in a residential recording studio rather than. Some people have studios in their houses, like in a back room or whatever, but our place it was all about the studio, and the family kind of just sort of lived around it, really. And they turned out great. They turned out good people, so it's all right.
Yeah. It's worked out. We've got a lovely audience, obviously, who are here, and we asked them if they had any questions for you. So I thought I'd better go into some of the questions during the course of our conversation. So hello to Sasha and Sophie, who got in touch to say, we have seen you several times over the last few years. Berlin was amazing.
It was great, yeah.
One of my most memorable moments was in Gloucester when you were watching Niall from the side of the stage. The crowd were chanting, "Niall effing Marr." How did that make you feel as his dad?
Well, I'm very proud of Niall. Any parent or anyone will understand it. So proud of him because he's a great person, but he's a really good guitar player. He's great. He plays on all these really wacky tunings, and so you pick up the guitar and you're just like, what the hell is this? And that's his thing. So it was I remember that. It was a good moment, actually. Yeah. He's working on his second album in August. He's working on that. He's got some pretty good songs. So yeah, he knows what he's doing. That's the thing. He's been writing songs since he was 14, 15, and you've seen him a lot, and he's been on your show and everything.
He's been in session, both acoustically, live to air, and in our session studio. He's great. And what I find interesting, he's grown up in your household, surrounded by music, as you say, kind of the family fitting around your own new form of residential studio.
Yeah.
But he also took himself out of his comfort zone. He took himself off as a kind of roadie. He worked with Warpaint and was working on their guitar pedals for them. And
he's been really. Yeah, he's not been born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Far from it. He's super indie. He's a really hardcore indie guy. He's Bandman made it. He comes from the culture of sleeping on your fans' floors, and he'll drive. He doesn't drink. He's vegan. He'll drive from Manchester to Edinburgh and then do the gig, be the front man, drive back from Edinburgh, drop the band off, go to Bristol or somewhere, wherever, Liverpool or whatever, for the next gig, and he'll stay on fans' floors. I'm like, dude, I'll get you a travel lodge, right? And also, I'm like, it's dangerous. I sort of do worry about him because he does all the driving and everything, but he's the singer and the driver and the roadie. And he roadied with Warpaint for a long time. Around Europe and everything. Although, he was a young... Have you seen what Warpaint looked like?
I have. Yeah.
Well, he was a 17-year-old boy, so I think it might have had something to do with it.
But what I love, in the same way that some people turn up to football matches and they've got their team's strip on underneath their clothes, waiting for that moment where they get picked out of the crowd. He had a case with a load of guitar pedals. So when one broke, he was able to just say, "Oh, well, actually, I've got just the thing here."
Yeah.
And that kind of got him the job.
He's really nerdy. He's never wanted to do anything else, from being 14, 15. So with Niall and his band, it doesn't really matter what level they're on. He'll just do it. He'll find the means. He never comes to me to ask for money or stuff. He'll do gigs to make money. He grew up really admiring Fugazi and the sort of the culture of the Pacific Northwest coast, where the Black Flag and that real hardcore scene. He's very melodic. He's not like, he doesn't play abrasive music. He got influenced by Elliott Smith when he first started. Elliott Smith, Neil Finn, John Martin, but the ethics and the culture of the hardcore scene he's really into. So he's like, wherever he can, he plays all age shows. And he's really sort of principled musician, and that's where he's coming from. Like, at whatever level, he's just always going to do it. He's never done anything else. Yeah.
Another couple of questions from our audience. And these kind of overlap. So there's one from Jane, that's Jane with a Y, and one from Phil Evans, who have a similar kind of question. So Phil says, have you seen any of the Smiths tribute bands? If so, what do you think? And Jane says, we have to follow the Smiths by seeing cover bands. Have you ever seen the Smiths, that's the Smiths with a Y, or Sweet and Tender Hooligans? Haven't?
Well, I've seen bits of them online. I've never gone to a gig. That would just be very weird. My daughter went to a gig. I don't think she's... I don't know how she ended up at a Smith tribute band gig. She said it was kind of weird. But both those bands you mentioned, the Smiths with a Y and Sweet and Tender Hooligans, I know are pretty good because they've been doing it they've been actually together longer than the real Smiths, haven't they? And yeah, Johnny never... No, I know, yeah, the guy never looks like me, does he? What?
Outrageous.
Wow, that's like... The guitarist, the tribute bands are always bald.
Shouldn't he be wearing a Johnny Marr wig? Have you ever sold a Johnny Marr wig? It's got to be done.
Well, actually, I do get a bit of that anyway. I get a bit still. Is that a wig? We're all bald, yeah, that's the thing. They know something everybody else doesn't. But good on them, I mean, it's they obviously are very dedicated, and they keep doing it. And I mean, it's an incredible, it's incredibly flattering. It's a great. I'm trying to think what's the word for it. Flattering it is anyway, Tribute.
Sean Roberts, is it Sean or Sean?
All right.
S-I-O-N. Anyway, are there any plans for any more albums with Bernard Sumner?
Do you know, honestly, it's funny how often I get asked that question. Which is really great because it's lovely that's, we're so loved. But if I was to do another album with Bernard, I wouldn't, no one would see me for like 3.5, 4 years. Because electronic takes so long, right, making records, right? Now, it's pretty obvious why that is, right? Well, if you think how many albums have I made in the last sort of 5 years? About 11, right? So something in that equation is slowing me down. And his name is Bernard Sumner.
How do you view electronic now?
How do I view it? Oh, absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's a long thing. I won't go into all of it because, with electronic, first album was great. We analysed the hell out of ourselves on the second album, although there are a few songs there that I really loved. I mean, one of my favourite ever songs, as everybody knows, is Get the Message, which is so simple. But Get the Message, Forbidden City, there's a whole bunch of songs anyway that we really like. I actually think the best electronic album, to quote Alan Partridge, is Electronic's Greatest Hits. It actually is the best album. Because we're a singles band, really. But in all honesty, the best thing for me about electronic was being Bernard Sumner's best mate for 9 years, because he's just that cool. You know, he's just he was a good guy to be a best mate of, and had he's got had a lot of good times and everything. And the first album, people who like it really love it. So I know it's great. I've got a whole sort of thing about electronic. Really, without electronic, I wouldn't have got to be where I am now, because the main thing is I learned. The Smiths has already done 70-odd songs that have now since become really revered. But without going into all the real boring technical details, I learned to be such a much better songwriter from working with Bernard Sumner and Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe. The stuff that I do now on my records, that is a skill that I learned from those guys. Bernard's sort of excitement factor, and he's got just a really interesting way of looking at the world, and Neil's pop smarts and Chris's sound smarts. It's a whole thing that people don't realise, but I know that some smart things that I do in songs, sometimes like going around a bit 3 times when you would think it's going around 4, and when it weird little arrangement things, I learned a lot from Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe, actually. So I would never swap any of that for the world, really. And also it was a bit of life for me, I needed to be around a certain kind of person when the Smiths split, because you can imagine it was 24, and I was really really fucking heartbroken. I wasn't going bye jolly up. It was really devastating for me, because I was forced into it. That's the simple way of explaining something very complicated. And so you can do a lot worse than have Matt Johnson as your mate in London and Bernard Sumner as your mate in Manchester, because they're really very significant fellas, and Chrissy Hind as well, and Kirsty MacColl. I had so many good people, and so a lot of that whole thing with me is a real personal philosophy, really, about, we all know when you have these amazing people in your lives that you think, wow, shit, if I hadn't have had those people, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so even though those people are famous people who have made records, a lot of what's happened when people ask me about those things, Kirsty, Chrissy, Matt and Bernard, is very much about the development of me as a person, and just being amazing mates that I learned a lot from, And they backed me up, actually, and sort of were behind me going, this is bullshit. What you're going through is utter bullshit. Let's make a track. Let's go on tour. The versus the world. Don't worry about it. So, that's what happened.
Fantastic. Here's an interesting question from Barnaby, who says, do you see or hear music in your sleep?
Oh, yeah. This thing of... I had this theory for a while, that, or this idea that... it's a good question, that, because often you're in a dream and you're working on a song, and it's really amazing. It's a really amazing song, and of course... You wake up in the morning and you just remember that you're in this amazing song. You don't have the presence of mind to snap out of it. So I tried to train myself to do that, because my logic was, well, yeah, it'd be really handy, And so I did go for a period where I tried to wake myself up when I was writing some songs, and when in my dreams, and they turned out to be not very good. Right, so that's the end of that story. But as some people who are around me will testify, I always had very weird sleeping patterns from being a kid, and I still do, and so I will wake up or be awake or in the middle of the night, and I will sort of be coming round, and I'll go, traces, that's really, really important. Send an email to myself, that's the answer. Or opening line of a song. And I've trained myself to do that. And It's not particularly healthy, but it's just this thing about, you know, I mean, a lot of people have it, where you just sort of your mind sort of filters all of this crap out and you just go bang, and I sort of do that in the service of songs now, really. But yeah, but I've never really dreamt a song and it'd be absolutely great, but I have done it maybe about 3 times and they were just like, they weren't that brilliant.
Brendan wants to know, who's your favourite new band out now? Can you possibly say that?
Yeah, I think so many bands around, but you know, and I don't know about everyone else, but I'm just now going Spotify playlist, Goat Girl. So kind of Goat Girl, I'm sort of seeing a playlist that their stuff appears a lot. So right now, Goat Girl are really good. Boy Azooga, I think, is pretty good. In terms of new music that I've heard, Boy Azooga's good. Pins have got, you know, Pins are pretty good. You've worked
they've
with
been in
Pins, haven't
session
you?
on the show.
And Courtney Barnett, I think, is a really good writer. It's just so happens that the girls are really doing it in a big. I mean, they've always been, you know, girls have always done stuff. Obviously with Chrissy and Polly Harvey and Kirsty and, you know, on and on it, you know, it goes. Sandy, Dusty Springfield, Sandy Denny. So what? But just sort of now found out when I'm doing interviews and stuff, when I'm asked about what I'm listening to, there just happens to be a lot of girls in there, and I don't know whether there's any big sociological reason for it. I just think it's a thing that's sort of just kind of happening. You know, I had Lone Lady open up for me a couple of years ago, and She Drew the Gun from Liverpool. You know, they're pretty good. My favourite band for years has been Yeah Yeah Yeahs, because everything they do I really like. Just, again, you know, girl singer. So I've worked with a lot of girls over the years, as everyone knows, really. And that's another good thing about writing the book, you know. When you see it all written down, you see these patterns, you know. Like working with Sandy Shaw, a lot of work with Kirsty MacColl, Chrissy Hind, now Maxine Peake. For a guy who was being known for being in a guitar band, I've worked with a lot of girls. And the person I'm collaborating with, the one thing I'm doing outside, as you know, outside of my own solo records now, which I'll get round to at some point again soon, is working with Maxine Peake, you know. I don't think there's any great sociological reason for it or anything like that. Maybe because I was so close to my sister, but I don't know, I like girls' voices, I think.
Yeah. There's an interesting question relating to Maxine Peake. I've just got to find it out. So, hello to Colette, who says, I'm a fussy bugger when it comes to music, but you have stopped me in my tracks recently with The Priest, which is the collaboration with Maxine Peake, and also Walk Into the Sea, which is from the new album, and there are parallels. How do you decide what music to keep for your own albums and which to use for collaborations?
I think whatever I'm working on, I get completely consumed by, absolutely consumed by. So that rules my life. So Call the Comet, anything that I was doing goes on Call the Comet. And sometimes that sort of worked out in a different way, you know, because you know, with Kirsty MacColl walking down Madison, I was sort of started off with that song for what I thought was a solo record, and then because I was working with Kirsty, that just took over on this album called Electric Landlady, and it was that, You've Got Any Riffs, you know, so whatever's right in front of my nose is what I do, you know what I mean? Like, so I never leave stuff knocking around, I just finish it, and very rarely do I finish an entire song that I've sung and everything, it not come out. But recently I did a song that Blondie asked me did I have any songs, and I just wrote one for them. So yeah, I mean, there's never any shortage of places for music to come out. But my day job is me and my band. That's my day job. That's what I'm doing, and because it's the most sort of satisfying, I think.
Somebody calling themselves Young, just Young. I love that. Young, hello.
I know Young.
What is your favourite? What is your favourite concert in your life? So I don't know whether that Young means anyone that you've played or anyone that you've attended.
My concert. Attended. Oh yeah, easy. I saw Patti Smith when I was 14, and I went on my own, and it completely changed my life. It's just I've had quite a lot of those moments, and I've been asked about it a fair bit, where, because when people read the book, apparently, there are times when I am very aware that, whoa, this is a big moment in my life, much like this moment right now. So that happened the moment that I was given this piece of paper from my mate with Morris's address on. I remember it. I remember it happening right then. I was thinking, I was just very aware. I was like, I think something really big is happening, And then when I went to see Patti Smith, I was 14. I was completely mesmerised by it, right at the front of the stage, and she was doing that Easter. So it was when Because the Night came out, and then the next day, I was walking around doing my paper round. So that's how young I was, and I knew that my life was different. I knew, because it's like I'd been given this real life lesson. I was kind of like, that's how you do it. I mean, how it was that I genuinely felt like I was looking into this different dimension, which was the stage, and I was aware of this at the time, and I was like, this is a different dimension, where these people are, where they're thinking, what they're doing for a job, and the way they're interacting with each other, and the way where she is in her mind is a different place to where I am, and I want to live there, and that's what I want to do as an adult. And sometimes I get there, and sometimes I just have a good time trying.
That kind of links into James Spicer's question. What was your favourite on-stage moment? So now that you've got there, you're on the stage, you've got the musicians around you. Are there moments when you think,
this is a moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got kind of, you think about it, when I was younger, I mean, there's so many like moments with the Smiths and stuff, but it was so frenetic. The Smiths shows were so nuts, and I was just trying to really keep it together. And I was younger as well. To be honest, I was kind of spoiled, because almost all our gigs were like that. So that's just was like pretty much all the Smiths gigs were like a moment, And I have to say, so much of that is down to the audience, but so much of it was down to the other three that I was playing with, hands down. What Morrissey was doing, what Mike and Andy was doing, with me collectively, with the audience, bingo, every night, pretty much. Sometimes there was violence, people, and it was just kind of out of control, amazing, The audience were ready to be manic. And then we went, hey, let's get more manic, So I now look back, but I was just in it, like in the middle of some sort of hurricane. So I have to really, I have to definitely sort of cite the Smiths for that. But the sort of thing you're talking about, like a moment, things like, standing out on the stage with Hans Zimmer and a 70-piece orchestra behind me, 50-piece orchestra and a 30-piece choir, playing Inception, in this amazing old amphitheatre, right, in south of France on a summer's night with this warm breeze going, right, and this incredible orchestral music behind you. What do you think that feels like? It feels like what it is. You go, this is amazing. Do not fuck up. I'm sort of like this. I just like, look really relaxed, but I'm like, inside. And imagine that with a 70-piece orchestra behind you. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So that's probably the first thing that comes to mind. Also, when I did There Is a Light at Glastonbury in, when was it, 2013 or something like that, and there was like grown men crying, right? And lots of other people crying too, but it was, I was aware that that was a moment. That was pretty good.
Hello to Dominic, who asks, which guitar line are you most proud of?
Well, you know, sorry to be so boring about it, but it does change from time to time. And I actually can't do it now because it needs a special device, but I'm always going to be really how to soundproofed that. By the way, my jet lag is really kicking in now, Sammy. Please give me some Coca-Cola. How Soon Is Now I'm always going to be really proud of because it's just so unique and, you know, and you know what it is. Oh, man, thanks very much. Great. Oh, that's amazing, right. Do you want to be a roadie? Oh, thanks. How Soon Is Now, you know what it is as soon as you hear it. And also, the cool thing about How Soon Is Now is that people who didn't like the Smiths and people who hate the Smiths, when How Soon Is Now come on, they go, oh, it's great, what's this? Someone says the Smiths, they go, oh, shit. Yeah.
How do you play How Soon Is Now? It's interesting. I remember hearing or reading this kind of origin for the riff and how Bo Diddley was the inspiration, which isn't necessarily apparent. When you explain it, it becomes apparent. But it's quite interesting because it's not. You don't immediately think of Bo Diddley when you think of How Soon Is Now.
Bo Derek. This might just work. Well, okay, so when in the 70s at some point, there was a song by this guy called Bohannon that came out called Disco Stomp. And it was just like a real dumb pop record. And so when my mates, as I say, when my mates were getting really into like clever guitar and Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and all of that stuff, and I was really a real student of the guitar. I was only about 12 or something. This record came out that went... It's really so dumb. It just goes, everybody do the disco stomp. Everybody do the disco stomp. And I would just wait for it on the radio. I was obsessed with that. Well, my mates were all into like Hendrix and stuff. I was just all about that. And I was kind of like, that's what a guitar should do. And then I always liked, so yeah, and then as I got older and I realised that came from this guy, Bo Diddley, who invented his own beat. I mean, to have a beat named after you, know, so it's a... which is pretty happening. And so then when the Smiths came to do How Soon Is Now, I demoed this song and it just used to go. And I knew it was a good demo. And then we came in and we cut the track and we put the track down and it was doing that. And Morrissey had sang on it. And it was cool, but it was bugging me when we were working on it. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it's great, it's great." It was an extra track on the 12-inch. It's great, it's great. Whilst we were doing it, it got to really late at night, and there was just something I just wasn't digging it. It didn't have the vibe of the demo, and then I just thought, oh no, I always wanted to put this tremolo effect on. I thought, right, now's my chance. So I just said, right, send the guitar out through the amp, and we got these amps, and I just put this effect on it. It's so simple, but just... Yeah, but that's because I was an eccentric kid who just sat in the car all the way on vacation, there and back, just sat feeling very, very car sick, just waiting for everybody in the disco stand, everybody. Seriously, I was green. That's how that happened, really. But it's just kind of being a creative person, I think. Yeah. 20 years later, whatever, 10 years later, you find yourself in a situation and you sort of call on it, you know. I'm crap at most other things.
I mean, tying in with that, I mean, Ian says, take us through your pedal box, which we could spend a few days doing, I suspect, but maybe not with the setup we have here.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened here is that the good folks at Fender have provided me with this because I've been out slugging over a hot interview schedule all day. Promageddon. So, but one thing I will explain is that over the years it's become apparent when someone else picks my guitar up, okay, that they when they play, it doesn't sound quite, it sounds quite full on because I play with a lot of echo like that, but most other people it just sounds like really wrong. But that's because, you know, I play loud, but I play light. So that echo covers up a lot of stuff, so... What I'm demonstrating is that when I play, you can't actually hear the echo going behind it. When other guitar players play with echo, you know... Yeah, they do that kind of thing. And you're aware there's echo, but when I play it... Don't really hear the echo. Has anyone got a tape machine? That's a really good riff.
This is being recorded, so, you know...
Hey, let's split the songwriting royalties 85 ways.
Julian says, what was your first favourite chord change, do you think?
Same one as it is now. That A minor to F and in different keys, right? So it's not too technical, but I used to wear records and I'd wonder why certain records that had this chord change, and I wonder why it would make me feel a certain way. It's kind of like... all different variations of it. that's all built on a similar kind of chord change. And I had a music teacher who was a real arsehole, and he was really pompous, and he used to just try and like confuse me with stuff that I wasn't interested in. And I asked him, he was so smart, and I asked him technically what the technicality was. I always used to just like not participate in the lessons, and my one contribution was, why does that chord change sound the way it does? And he absolutely couldn't answer me, and because there probably isn't an answer, to be fair to him, but I was obsessed with it. But then I sort of developed that kind of vocabulary on some songs of my own then, and started switching stuff around. So even though, okay, I won't go into all the technical details, but that love of that. So if anyone knows that song by Bob Dylan, pistol shattering out on a ballroom night, Hurricane, it's in that. It's also the classic thing, it's in Jimi Hendrix or Bob Dylan, All on the Watchtower. It's in a lot of that. But anyway, there's through a bit of a convoluted explanation, it's sort of... I then started to take the long way round, and I put my own slant on it. So I kind of grew it into that in the end. That's because I'm very hyperactive.
It's interesting. I mean, obviously, from one guitar player to another, and you've worked with lots of other guitar players too. And Joe Barber has a question, which is what was it like to work with John Frusciante from Red Hot Chili Peppers? And any plans to work together again?
Well, I would like to work with John Frusciante again. Yeah, he's... working with John was great because he's very intense. He's very serious about what he's doing, and I really admire him. And I ended up doing about 3 tracks in one night with him, and on this album, The Empyrean. And he's a very sort of questing spirit, and I suppose quite a spiritual sort of guy, and very philosophical. So we had a lot in common, really. And I did what I always did, was he had some tracks going, would you want to play on my record? And he said to me, I'll send you the tracks over. And I said, no, I don't want to hear them before I go in. And he was like, what? I was like, do you not want to be prepared? I said, no, don't. And because over the years I've learned that when I work on other people's records, the best thing for me is to have my guitar ready to go and hear it and just go, what I'm going to do might not be what you want, but it's what I think you need. And no, it's not quite like that. No, I just kind of go, listen, I'm going to be a bit crap and I'm going to make mistakes because I've no idea what this is going to sound like, but let me just react. Let me just do what comes first, because quite often your initial reaction is really a good one. And I'm beyond kind of worrying about making mistakes, and, as you might have gathered. But, I don't really have those kind of insecurities anymore, or ego nonsense. I just kind of go, look, if I make mistakes and I hit the wrong chords, whatever. And that quite surprises people, but it's just like reacting. It's a little, in a way, because you are on the spot. Particularly as usually now, there's always someone there with a camera. It's a little bit like getting in a car, and your car you don't know, and then driving down a country lane pretty fast and going, you do that. And trying to negotiate your way through it, except you're not actually going to be killed at the end of it, right? Well, unless you're working with Noel Gallagher, which is like a good chance. Anyway, so that's what I do, and then it's like throwing paint on a canvas really quick, and then you go right. Okay, now that bit is really good, and that bit's really good, and And actually working on Noel's last couple of records has been really great for that. Because he now knows how I do that. He's kind of always amazed by it, that I don't want to hear the stuff in advance. He wants to always send me an MP3 before. I'm like, no. So that works out okay, I think. I first started doing that properly when I worked with Beck on Midnight Vultures. Yeah.
Noel says he has a kind of bat phone, which is a hotline straight to you when he is in an emergency and he needs to talk to the only person who can help him out, which is Johnny Marr. And in some ways, I mean... You showed an extraordinary act of generosity, because Noel tells this story about how when he was starting out in Oasis, you met by kind of chance.
Yeah.
And you took him to a guitar shop and you gave him a guitar.
Yeah, we went to a guitar shop. I didn't get him a guitar from the shop. I gave him one that was much more valuable. But no. I gave it. Yeah. He was skint, and back then I just liked him, and honestly, I had no idea. Who would have known that Oasis were going to be? They didn't know. I mean, no one could have predicted what was going to happen to him. He was just this guy who I recognised was intense and really serious about what he was doing, and he was skint, and I had a load of guitars, and I thought, right, okay, well, I'll give him this guitar, and. He could have come to nothing, really. It would have made no difference to me. And, I had loads of people... Well, I had some people give me a helping hand when I started out, right? Little things here and there, and you need it. So you do need it. So it just turned out that he then became, really, really successful. And then he hit someone in the audience with it and broke it and asked me for another one. Which I gave him because I was drinking back then. And that's absolutely the truth. But I don't regret it for a minute. Those two guitars I gave Noel, one was the one I wrote The Queen Is Dead on and recorded all of that stuff on, and I'm really more than happy that it's gone to a good home. He loves having them, and me and him laugh and joke about it. That I loaned it him and he didn't, never returned it and all of that. And fans get on me about that, but they're absolutely Noel's guitars, and I'm proud to be, be part of that story really, because he's a good guy.
Fantastic. Jem Faulkner wants to know, what's the one song or piece of music you wish you had written?
Ooh. Yeah. Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks, I think. Because everybody knows it's like a little mini movie. I mean, it's just utterly brilliant. I'm such a fan. Even. Let me just turn this echo. I wish I'd written that. That's really... All right. There's loads, but a lot of them are by Ray Davies. But Waterloo Sunset, I think, is absolutely beautiful. It's like it stands up there with any other piece of art from the last century. I think it's just as great as a Picasso, and it's as great as a Fellini movie, and it's great as any painting I can think of, really. So yeah, a few Lou Reed songs that I would have liked to cop. I'm pretty sure Ray Davies would have been pretty pleased with How Soon Is Now, though.
I think so. And we've been pretty pleased.
Yeah, I said it, Ray. All right, Ray.
And we've been pretty pleased to be able to sit here with you tonight, Johnny, and have an evening in conversation with Johnny Marr for Radio X in support of Global's Make Some Noise. Johnny, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah. Thanks to everyone thanks to you guys for coming down, buying tickets, supporting a great cause. It's been really nice and fun for me. I've only just got back off tour, so it's nice to see everybody. And as I say, it is a great cause, and I'd really like to thank John for being such a gracious host.
Johnny Marr, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Radio X.